Okay, let's start. Hope you can see me and hear me. Please let me know in the chat if the video and audio works well. Thank you very much for the confirmation. Let me introduce myself. My name is Zsigmond Péter, the organizer of the GDG Budapest and GDG Cloud Budapest communities. Welcome to today's online event brought to you by GDG Cloud Budapest and Deutsche Telekom IT Solutions Hungary. Today's topic is site reliability engineering. We are proud to host Riccardo Carlesso, developer, advocate at Google Cloud and author of the book Enterprise Roadmap to SRE. SRE stands for Site Reliability Engineering. He's going to talk about site reliability engineering adoption and about how SRE adoption can fail in some cases. He has been talking to customers regarding their site reliability engineering adoption since 2019. Oftentimes they struggle applying the Google methodology within their company. In his talk, Riccardo will first set an introduction to SRE, then he's going to explain what failure patterns he observed. Please welcome Riccardo.
We have 1 hour and this presentation is going to last half an hour. So I want to give you a lot of time to ask questions and to answer your questions rather than doing it something like up until the end and then you don't get to ask what you want to ask. I hope that works for you. This presentation is entitled How to Fail Your SRE Adoption in the Enterprise particularly. I've been talking to customers for nearly 4 years now, 3.5 years about SRE, first in Google Cloud when I was in professional services and now as a developer advocate. A lot of customers tell me their story and sometimes they fail to adopt it. So I learned through the years a number of things that I'm very happy to share with you. To be completely fair, there are two authors here, Steve McGee and James Brookbank, who wrote a little book, more on that in the next few slide. This is Enterprise Roadmap to SRE. It was written by James and Steve, not by myself. I contributed to it, but very little, like commenting here, you should add this, like Google Doc commenting. 99.9% of their work is theirs. It's actually a booklet of 54 pages, so it's something you can read in a couple of hours. It's available for free under g.co/cloud/endsre. As you can see, PDF and EPUB completely free of charge, no strings attached to Google. It's written by Googlers. It's our experience, but even if you're in another cloud, not a problem. A couple of words on the two authors. James Brookbank is a cloud solution architect based in New York and a friend of mine. And Steve is basically my equivalent on the San Francisco area, on the USS, just like it's a better version of mine. He's a developer advocate for reliability, just like myself. I just am more concentrated on the EMEA sites, on the European customers in a way. So yeah, I've been a Ruby on Rails developer. I even wrote code in Perl, if you can believe me. I'm now doing reliability operations, SRE, DevOps, plus I have another of other hobbies that you might be less interested to. And I don't know how many of you are from Budapest, but I can tell you the last time I was in Budapest, I fell in love for Villany wine from Lake Balaton, and God, I love red wine from the southern part. I really need to say I'm a huge fan, and I look forward to come back there. Now, this is the TLDR of the whole presentation. Half an hour presentation, but the first slide kind of says it all. You don't like surprises. So what have we seen with customers trying to adopt our model of SRE and sometimes failing, sometimes succeeding? First, they take the word, now I'm doing SRE, now I'm like Google, right? Well, maybe yes, maybe not. There are a lot of factors to take into consideration. So the enthusiasm is definitely a lot more than the successful adoption of SRE. Second thing that might surprise a few of you is reliability is not the most important thing for everything or for everyone. We notice that customers tend to think like SRE, like putting everywhere, and that's just wrong. What you should do is concentrate on a very few mission critical applications and implement it there. Also because it's kind of expensive. Number three, SRE is expensive and difficult to achieve. Often it seems, and often it is more difficult. And finally, some people want to be like Google. Some people don't want to be like Google. Ultimately, my suggestion is don't try hard to be like another company. Be yourself and try to understand what is defining you and your company and your team, and try to apply to to do like food shopping, what works for you. What do you like? Are you vegan? So you will not buy chicken. Like it's the same thing for your team. You need to find what works for you. Maybe you are bought into the incident management and postmortem, but and maybe into SLOs, but maybe you don't want to do SLO with consequences, for example, or you don't want to have error budget. You just want to see how things are going, do a little bit more metering and observability. That could work. Again, my suggestion is take small pieces rather than big pieces, big chunk of it. Don't try to get perfection today. Aim at something that might work for you and have a feedback loop by which you have increments on that. So part one, let's get started. So I suppose many of you recognize other words around SRE. What we found is that customers tend to say like, oh, SRE is the future, ITIL is the past. I don't want to do it anymore. And they can't resist to the temptation. Maybe a VP is a bit aggressive and they're like, oh, let's just cancel everything that was done before. Let's do it done well, like how Google does it. And that usually is a great recipe for failure because number one, SRE is aligned with 90% of what Agile, DevOps, Lean, and ETL say. So removing them all together probably puts you back and not ahead in your velocity, in your reliability path. Number one. Number two, deleting something that exists probably will foster that to be born again in somewhere invisible in your company, done by somebody behind closed doors because they don't want you to know, otherwise you cut it again. So something imperfect but visible to everybody is better than something invisible. That's an example for change advisory boards or NOCs, right? We don't think that you should cancel a change advisory board if you implement ETL, for example. You should keep having it, but maybe modernize it, maybe add some capabilities, slowly changing to the direction that you want. Maybe it's not doing something that you wanted to do. Try to change it, but talk to them. Again, canceling it altogether doesn't work. I can also tell you that in general, the problem is that with centralization and top-down organization, it works with a company of 10 or 100, but when you have 100,000 people, you cannot have a top-down. People need to be able to move independently. Otherwise, everybody's frozen in a well-known state, but there is no progress in there, right? But you might say, oh, it all depends on the company you work with. Are you a digital native, or are you? Do you have like some old legacy software written in COBOL in the 70s that the developer don't work here anymore, or maybe they died of old age and nobody can maintain that code anymore? Somebody miraculously Dockerized some COBOL or ABAP code, and now you need to deal with it. So again, if you had to do with legacy software, you know that the cloud architects, sysadmins, project manager, even DBA, somebody fell trying to fight the beast. But not everybody is like that. Maybe you're in a company, a cloud native like Twitter. It's just like Rails new, Rails scaffold, the Heroku deploy, bingo, you're in prod, right? So we know we have customers that are digital natives. For them, SRE is like, yeah, sure, bro. I drink SRE for breakfast to energize myself. And there are customers for whom this is kind of a mirage, a very difficult to achieve. So what is the lesson here? The lesson here is there is one thing which is cloud adoption, one thing which is SRE. Our suggestion is don't try to get both or you will get indigestion. Try to do one at a time. The two things are kind of, there are two very different and difficult things to do. So my point is, if you're in the cloud already, probably you have already done your journey of breaking the monolith into smaller microservices, Dockerization, blah, blah, blah. And then probably SRE adoption will be easier for you if you're on the lower side. If you're on the upper side, maybe there is a lot of work you need to do to achieve SRE, but if you try to do that and get to the cloud at the same time, probably you will fail. So pick one beast, fight one, and get the other beast for the next year. That's our suggestion. And here a little bit of sponsor, a minute from the sponsor. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with DORA. DORA, DevOps and Research Assessment, is a small company of researchers that Google Cloud acquired back in 2017, if I remember correctly. And this is a number of PhDs, researchers that have found that there are a number of capabilities that predict or strongly correlate with business outcomes. And actually, a number of technical, process, and cultural things can actually bring you to have a bigger velocity or higher stability. And if you don't care about that, that have a higher commercial outcome. So tell your CTO and your CMO that brings us more money, right? So if you want more money, you want to increase your velocity, your stability, your reliability. And going back, how do you do that? By improving your trunk-based development, your cloud infrastructure, shift left on security, work in small batches, visibility of working value stream, learning culture, generative trust-based. All of that is documented in g.co/DevOps, and I strongly encourage you to click this link. Another thing that might look counterintuitive is, but how are you telling me, Riccardo, that reliability and velocity, which are notorious for being fighting against each other, right? Like if my dev team is faster, usually my ops team will need to deal with more change and things will break more. How are you telling me that reliability and velocity can both be achieved at the same time? Yes, our research with 50,000, 40,000 data points shows that reliability is a force multiplier. It makes it nearly 2x more likely for you to get to your business goal, meaning more money, right? And actually, software delivery performance and reliability together, they reinforce each other. They build upon each other. I know it seems counterintuitive. It's like fire and ice together. They make it better and more resilient. Yes, they do. They do. And this is proven by our research. Another thing that our research proves, and I can tell you when I talk to customers and I talk about culture, they're like, oh my God, I thought you were an engineer. You talk to me about culture. I'm going to get a coffee and come back in 10 minutes when you're done with this boring topic. And I get it. A lot of people hate it and a lot of people love it. So here I am speaking a couple of slides about culture. We found that SRE is more likely to thrive and prosper in a generative culture. What is a generative culture? Let's take a step back. A certain Ron Westrom, nearly 50 years ago, if I remember correctly, postulated the existence of a number of batches or of classes of companies of three types: pathological, bureaucratic, and generative. The pathological, think of somebody with a very strong leader, where the strong leader tell people how to do it, and in a hierarchical way, you go down. Think of, I don't know, Twitter V2, right? I don't know. Or bureaucratic, it could be like a company. Think of big banks or state or, people that are very afraid of failure, right? So they have a lot of rules. They have very bureaucratic, and my country is very bureaucratic. We have, I think, 5x the laws of any other country in the world. So we want to make sure there is a law for everything, but that reduces velocity, because then you need to deal with all the rules that prevent you from doing something or sometimes getting something wrong, and change faster is better than getting everything right, but at a very slow pace, right? That's what the bureaucratic or rule-oriented are. And as you can see on every line, you have cooperation, messengers, failure, novelty. All of them, they move from novelty crush to novelty implemented, from responsibility shared to shared, from failure scapegoated to failure leads to inquiry. I can tell you, in Google, when you break Google and we lose $500 million in an hour, the person doesn't get fired, and their salary is much lower than what they just lost, right? They feel very bad, trust me. But usually they say, okay, tell me how it broke. How can we prevent it from breaking again? And the last people we want to fire is that person who knows everything about the context. Not only I asked them what they ate for breakfast or for dinner yesterday, I asked you, what were you doing when you were typing that thing on the keyboard? What were the things that were happening before? What made you type the thing on the keyboard? That thing has happened and there was an alarm and you wanted to fast do that. But why did you break it? Why could you break it? Then we realized that, we were in process of creating unit tests to prevent people from shooting the sample of the food, but we deprioritized that. That cost us 500 million. It's not this person's fault. Maybe we should have prioritized that unit test that would have prevented us from that failure. So that is a failure leads to inquiry, right? And again, it's the breaking of silos, etc. So what is a generative company? It's a company that is performance oriented. If you might read the Netflix, Microsoft, other company are giving free holidays to everyone. How can you give free holidays to everyone? Well, if your job is linked to your objectives, I don't care how many holidays you take as long as you reach those objectives. How cool is that? So depending on your culture, we found that a generative culture is more likely to be able to support SRE. We've seen bureaucratic and pathological companies trying to implement it. I've seen bureaucratic companies, they are very slow at doing that, but they're trying and they are succeeding. So it's possible, it's just harder. Now, you say, okay, Riccardo, enough with the theory. Tell us some pragmatical tool on how to implement SRE. So let me tell you what we found that works and what we found that doesn't work. Number one, training centers. Nothing against filling a class with 20, 30 people learning from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Nothing against it, but we think that classroom-based training is not the best way to do it. You should limit to 10%, maybe 20% of the training. The rest, the majority, should be mentoring, learning by doing, pair programming, dojos. Like by pair programming, I'm also talking about pair operations. So in Google, there is a senior SRE which teaches the junior SRE how to do stuff. We have Wheel of Misfortunes, in which the young SRE is pretendedly on call, and they say, okay, you've just been paged, and now App Engine is down. What do you do? I don't know. Look at the playbook. And that's a learning lesson for everybody, because you know what? The junior doesn't know where is the playbook. And the senior can I even arrogantly say, oh, it's there, the playbook. But then you find out that maybe the playbook wasn't up to date, and it gave steps which were true 1 year ago, but not true today. So the senior say, sorry, let me fix it, because this weekend when you're on call for real, you will have the playbook up to date. So it's a learning lesson from senior and junior all together. So that's why training centers don't really work. We prefer, mentoring on the side, on the desk, COVID permitting. Second thing, centers of excellence. We found the center of excellence don't really work for us. My manager, Nathan, would say, if you are in a center of excellence and I'm not in it, what am I? In the pond of mediocrity? And apart from the joke, you need to think like, if they are on the center of excellence and you're not, my idea is probably they are paid more money than you, and probably they tell you which job you need to do. And then you have this kind of ivory tower effect where the people telling you what to do, they don't really know what's going on. They don't get their hands dirty, which is why in SRE, it's important that if you automate yourself out of the job, you need to get your hands dirty, because if you do, tomorrow you know what to automate. You automate the things that yesterday bugged you for the most time, right? And maybe also the easiest thing to automate first, so you reclaim some time back, then you automate something which takes you maybe a couple of weeks, and then you reclaim other time back, and so on and so forth. So it's a loop, right? So learning by doing. That's why we believe that rather than center of excellence, we believe more in the community of practice. So you say, hey buddies, who wants to learn Terraform with me, or Pulumi with me, or Ruby with me, or whatever, load balancing on Google Cloud? Whatever it is, this COP, everybody's welcome to come. There is no silos. Everybody can come from different parts of your company. And that opens door. I mean, I've just done it in Google. There was like a siloed, only one team doing a certain thing. And I said, like, folks, can we just rename it and open it to everybody in Google? And now it's 3 times the same size. And we are realizing that those people have a lot to contribute back. And everybody's happy that we did that. So breaking walls, opening doors, and making sure that everybody's involved without this classist, I'm excellent and you're mediocre. No. Or you are excellent and I'm mediocre. Let's try to make sure that we are all, if you are interested in joining this community, we can just do it, right? Finally, the Big Bang approach, where you want to implement SRE, but you want to do it so perfectly that you spend 1 year thinking about it, 1 year talking about it. And then on the 1st of January, 2024, you start implementing it. And that is, if you're lucky, perfection. But then it took you 1 year to get there. And if you're unlucky, maybe you made a mistake and you need to rethink it for another year. So the idea is start small batches, small iteration, start with a little capability and build upon it. And so you can also observe if you're doing well. It's basically apply Agile also to your SRE creation model rather than just to the software. Okay, let's get a question for the room. I would like everybody to write in chat what they think. Can you build a 4 nines services on top of a 3 nines infrastructure? So platform, infra, 3 nines, you build something on top of it with 4 nines. Is it possible or is it impossible? So I get yes. I get 4 yes. Oh, thanks, Sirisha. 4 yes, 1 no. 5 yes, 6 yes, 6.2, 6.3, 6.4. So up until Volodymyr Vrublevsky, we have 6 yes and 4 no. So we are a bit like, we are kind of 50-50 with a little majority on the yes. So drum roll, yes, you can. And we tell you this because I guess probably a lot of smart people are here in the audience. When we talk to big old companies, they are quite surprised by this. Well, how is that possible? I buy expensive mainframe, which are super reliable, and on top of that, the reliability goes down. It doesn't go up, right? Which makes sense. First thing, think of RAID, a redundant array of inexpensive disks. So you have cheap disks, you put them in parallel from a logical perspective, and then you achieve a higher reliability than the single disk, right? So what we try to tell our customer is usually difficult to do is this. We are moving away from a model in which you have a very, very expensive computer, and then on top of that, you have super expensive networking fabric, and on top of that, always expensive stuff. And then slowly, every time you go up one layer of OSI or of the logic of your application, you start eroding this reliability from 5 nines, 4, 3, 2, until you get to maybe a 90% crappy software. How's that possible? I have a super expensive millionaire hardware in my basement. So in Google, we don't do that approach. When you own millions of computers and you want to experiment and you want to change them over time, you want to buy relatively cheap hardware, because we're talking about like this, the scale is insane. When you are a cloud provider, the quantity of computers you need to buy is huge. And even if they are the most expensive and best thing ever today, in 2 years, they are going to be medium at most, right? So how do you do it? Well, in Google, we believe that the software must improve availability and other metrics. So you can build with smart software on top of that. And if you have hundreds of thousands, millions of computers, that part you can take it for granted. And when you write a software program that can scale up to many thousands of machines, you better pay a very big salary to software engineers so they can really think it through. So every software written by us, for example, needs to take into account a lot of failure domains. So the machine below you could disappear in the next 5 seconds. Usually you get a SIG up and a SIG int. So a smart program will be a smart program written in C, C++, Go. We're talking about like system languages. We'll need to be able to intercept that interrupt and flush to disk as soon as possible, because then you lose the pod, you lose the machine, and you get migrated elsewhere. Everything Google migrates all the time, right? I was reading, we have an average of 6,000 reboots a second. It's not about if. 6,000 a second is just happening all the time, right? So we call it scale out. The software must improve availability. Spend money on the software and spend less money on the hardware. This is like the short solution, if you want. Another question that might emerge is, okay, for the product people in the room, if there are any, where should I apply SRE? To everything? The answer is usually no. You want to concentrate on what's important. But what's important? The product that I have today, the product that I'm studying for tomorrow, like the V2, or an emerging product in an abstract state that I don't even know how it looks like, but we're playing around and interviewing customers on it. Well, the first answer is you should definitely apply on the first one and probably on the second one, and definitely not on the third one. Why? Because reliability is important for the things that your customers cares about, the customer uses, the customer depends on. They don't depend on an emergence product because by definition, they're not there. I had a UK customer who wanted us to implement SLO on a testing thingy used internally by 5 users, which had an average of 100 queries per month. So 99% means that 1 query per month can fail. That was the QPS. I found it hilarious. So cost reduction. I want to implement SRE, but it's going to be cheaper, right? The answer is yes and no. So there are various dimensions to this, where you can see this answer being answered. So there is a time dimension. We will see later in a slide that usually SRE tends to be more expensive at the beginning and give you a cost reduction over the long term. So yes, on the long term, but no on the short term. but also it's a strategic investment where the whole company benefits from it, but not your team. That means that if you link the SRE expenditure to your team, the manager above or one or two level of management above your team will look at the numbers like, whoa, this SRE is costing me a lot, let's kill it. Because the return on investment is not at team level, you understand? Like you spend the money here, but you gain money here. So SRE should be a strategic investment done like, I don't know, top down, like the CTO should decide to do it all across the board. Then you will invest everywhere and the money will come back everywhere. But if you just do it in the team ABC, the team FUBAR will just experience a higher cost. You will need to hire twice the engineer to do the same job, and it will look like it costs twice as much, and it looks stupid. But then actually the things that come out of the team are amazing, and all the company benefits from it. I hope this makes sense to some of you, probably, maybe not to everyone. And let's finally get to some funny SRE principle. Number one, renaming your ops team SRE won't help. I've seen many companies just recalling from ops, DevOps or ops to SRE and thinking they were done. You already know that this doesn't make sense, right? Just the renaming doesn't work. Another thing is start small. Water your plant, put getting some sunlight, and start incrementally. Build advanced capabilities after building basic capabilities and avoid big destroying mistakes from the organization. Invest in people, spend money in people. Don't fire ops just because they can code. Value the existing employees, give them value, give them time to grow. Maybe pay them, your ops people cannot code or they can only write some Perl, get them to study some more modern language. Why not, right? Staffing, retention, pay them well. I hear a lot of VPs telling me, we cannot find a good SRE in the market. Well, if you consider doubling the salary, maybe now you will find them, right? Embrace the risk. We find companies that don't want to risk. Think of banks. For them, risking is up. They say, I can do whatever you want, but not get assuming risks. So like that's, for us, it's an anti-pattern. Like if there is no risk, like if you don't fail, you don't really succeed. If you want to shy away from failure, that means that you move at such a small speed that probably your competition will eat you up in 1, 2, or 5 years. Treat failure as an unplanned learning opportunity. In Google, on average, every on-call SRE has 12 hours per 2 outages. This is how we model statistical probability of an outage by the time people on call have been there. That's how we do our math. 6 hours per outage means that you have 1 hour to fix it and 5 hours to write documentation post-mortem. If you just, like a customer of mine here in Switzerland, say like, no. After I've done an outage, I just go home, get a glass of wine, talk to my wife, and go to sleep because I'm exhausted. Even it's 2 p.m. in the afternoon, I just get drunk. And so like, I understand. But the morning after, you come to work and you write what you remember from yesterday. No, we just move on. Okay, but then how do you prevent that from repeating itself, right? So that's, you need to give time to your ops to write what went wrong yesterday, so tomorrow it will be harder for it to happen again. Or if it happened again, it's documented, you have a playbook. So instead of taking half an hour to fix it, maybe it will take 3 minutes, right? Because that's the order of magnitude. It's 1 order of magnitude less usually. Okay, this is the famous J curve I was telling you. Is it going to cost me less? Is SRE going to be efficient for me? Well, you might experience an initial drop in productivity or in outcomes, but you're going to have a high return on the long run. This is what our DORA research from 2018 and also from 22, like the last year, has just confirmed. You might notice an initial improvement from low-hanging fruit, but then when you do more and more automation, you get with a lot of technical debt, and you need to work a lot to fix the technical debt, and you get a negative effect, then still a bit negative until you skyrocket up. So short term could be bad, could be good. Mid term, probably bad. Long term, very good. Most likely, fingers crossed, very good. This is why some people just in the middle, they say like, oh, I'm leaving it because it's not working for me. Have patience, try another month. Section 4, we get towards the end of this presentation because again, I want to hear from you all of your questions. There is an article which I strongly encourage you to read. I read it last week. Operations is not developer IT by Matthew Duggan. It changed my life. It was amazing. I share with my colleagues. This was again a tip from Steve and James. Amazing, amazing. And it talks about the paradox of operation having become the new IT for devs. The devs say, product is broken, fix it for me. My laptop is broken, fix it for me. My printer is broken, fix it for me. Like, if you get to the point where ops is the kitchen sink of everything for developer, that is wrong. If the dev says, oh, but my Docker container works on my computer and doesn't work in production, it's clearly your fault. You need to fix it. Like, are you sure it's me? If it doesn't work in production as a vanilla deployment, probably you need to look at your code better. Like, I can try to help you find and troubleshooting. Like, we get more and more devs who don't even read the logs of their application. They just ship it, thinking that somebody else needs to know it. I don't know. In Google, we believe that the devs need to own much more than that. They need to know intimately. Of course, the SRE could say, hey, can you please write me a line of log when this happens so I can meter on that? I can export the metric for this important value. Sure, bro, I can do it. But also think that the developer should own more. Read the article. It will change your perspective, particularly if you're a developer. Target midterm planning. If you're just getting started, the best thing you can do is manage incidents in a mature way. Do incident response the good way. Do postmortem. Write action item in the postmortem. Act upon those action items and build a better platform. Those postmortem will be a beautiful explanation of what went wrong and what you need to do differently not to make it go wrong. And usually they have a bunch of feature requests on your Jira backlog, and if you implement them, you will never have the incident again. You might ignore them, but when next month you have the same incident, you will think like, stupid me, I should have implemented at least the P0 of them. And one last thing, which I already mentioned, use feedback loops to make this intentional. Feedback loops come from theory in the military and in the tertiary, if you will. PDCA is plan, do, check, act, and OODA is observe, orient, decide, and act. In both cases, the idea is that you look what's around you, you observe, you make a plan, you do something about it, and then you go back to observing what were the outcomes of my decision. So it's a very short loop. If you do this loop in 5 years, you're out of business. If you do every 5 minutes, probably you're out of business again because you're spending all time planning. So you need to find the right compromise, the right time for this to happen. And this is particularly true in an ambiguous world where you don't know, you have a lot of competition. I'm Google, there is Microsoft, there is Amazon, there is Facebook. I want to know what they're doing. So you cannot take decisions too very far out. You need to do something, and maybe in a month, look back. Did I do right? I should maybe adjust my strategy, and so on and so forth. Take feedback loop. Feedback loops is the number one solution for everything. If you don't have feedback loop, means that you're just going into one direction, always straight without looking back. That is a great recipe for disaster, both for devs and ops. And now let's talk about platform. If you say, Riccardo, but I don't have a platform. We just bought a Bitbucket. We wrote a couple of tools. We have a Kubernetes cluster here. Well, as my colleague Steve would say, if all the tools and the system that you're using at the moment, that is your platform, is the water you're swimming in at the moment. It doesn't matter if you implemented or if you bought it as a service. Like probably you bought Jira, or maybe you implemented Jira yourself because you've done it, you want to do it better. Maybe ticketing system is your thing. Maybe you want to buy a commodity. Doesn't really matter. What matters is that you have a platform, you have a number of capabilities, and you want to build on top of that. Now, one lesson that we learned is that you need to decouple the platform you're building and the service that are adopting it. The worst thing that you can do is to get the most important service on top of your platform immediately. Instead, you should just concentrate on the capabilities, add them. Okay, I have a CI/CD pipeline. Okay, I don't have rollback. I implement manual rollback. Okay, to next week, I implement automated rollback based on some naive thingy, and then it becomes more and more complicated, the rollback. Okay, now I move to multi-cluster. Maybe I do some canary deployment. Okay, that works well. Canary plus multi-cluster, I've done it. So difficult, so difficult. You want to do that? Good, you do that. Now you have a very chubby and powerful platform. Okay, which service do you adopt? The most tough ones? No, start with the little one, a little service that nobody cares about, because you want to have an early adopter that could fail. And because there is still no trust in the platform, nobody knows the platform because you just built it yesterday, maybe, right? And you want to get to the point where the last service is the most important service you have. It will inherit magically all the capabilities that you built. That's the beauty of the platform, like this infra on top of which everything runs, right? Think of like a Kubernetes cluster on steroid, if you want. And you can deploy high-value services later, granting this capability all at once for free. And if something fails, let the little backup as a service that nobody cares about. If you fail at one backup, who cares, right? As long as the other backup works. And then the production-ready system that you need to migrate, you migrate in 1 month or 2 months later. So all the errors, you stretch them out over time, and then you gain confidence in those capabilities. So don't adopt a high-value service on top of your thing because it could break immediately. I hope this wasn't too abstract. Maybe it was. Sorry about that. And finally, this is a provoking thought. Why do we have CISO for security, but we don't have chief reliability officers? So this slide is just to tell you sponsorship matters. In Google, we have Ben Trenos-Loss. I had dinner with this man. He's an amazing person. And Ben has politically and technically influenced how in Google we do operations. And he's been leading in a very good way. And I mean, he's been guaranteeing that people were not fired when they did a mistake, but that we will learn from that. He's been encouraging it over time, and that has worked. That has promoted a culture of openness, because that means that if I make a mistake, I know that my VP will not fire me. Maybe somebody about the line might want to fire me, but there will be a manager that they will say, what the hell are you doing, right? So that's good. It gives me a sense of safety. And when I talk to my customers, I don't know, in Italy, they tell me, oh, if I make a mistake or admit a mistake, that will make my +2 manager look very stupid, and he doesn't want to look stupid towards the other manager. So we will just put the dust under the table, under the carpet, sorry. And if that's your case as well, that might say a lot about the culture. That's why culture means a lot. Because if in operations, if you don't feel like admitting your mistake, that is a loss for everybody. You're covering your thingy, but your company is losing money because of your choice. So ultimately, it's that cultural dictamen that makes you want to hide your mistake and pretend it wasn't you and scapegoating, etc. Ultimately makes it more difficult for the company to recover from it or prevent this from happening again. So it's definitely bad for business. So again, sponsorship matters. Try to find a sponsor. We are at the end of the talk. I will have one slide of what can fail miserably. Like I put a couple of bullet points of what will help you fail, which hopefully is a number of anti-patterns you don't want to follow, and the next slide with the positive patterns. So I hope I didn't bore you so far. Again, this is a recap. Renaming DevOps to SRE won't help. Separating tool and automation team don't work, because as I said, you need to keep your hand dirty if you want to know what to fix. No ivory tower, right? Aim at wanting an immediate cost reduction. If you look at money all the time, you will probably be unhappy with SRE and you will probably not adopt it. You need to just trust that it will work on the long time. Another thing that I noticed that most people tend to fail is like, take a super busy team and say, from Monday we do SRE. That won't work. You need to have non-busy people who will work on the automation. In Google, there is a 33-66% ratio that we want to encourage. It can get at most to 50-50. So your toil, so the time to fix boring bugs and tickets should be between 1/3 and 1/2 of your time. So between 2/3 and 1/2, you should have fun automating yourself out of the job, automating things that will prevent those tickets from yesterday to reappear next Monday, right? And if your team is already busy, when are they going to do it? After hours, tonight until midnight? You can work one night late, but you cannot work the next 3 or 6 months late, because somebody promises you in 6 months you're going to have half the ticket. And I have a feeling maybe that's not so easy. You need to budget for people to do that. That means an immediate cost, right? That's why. Start solving the toughest problem first and aim for perfection. We discussed that. Ignore sponsorship, because who cares about a CTO buying into SRE, right? And implement SRE in pathological bureaucratic. As I said, you can, but I think if you want to implement in a pathological bureaucratic, you need to have a strong sponsorship and try to create in your community of practice, a healthy way to do it, where people are not messenger and not shot. Again, I think without, like, if 6 and 7 both happen, you cannot succeed. But with good sponsorship, I think you could. And finally, how to nurture success. Aim for sublinear scaling in everything you do. Understand that everything that what is true today might not be true tomorrow. Build and retain a sustainable team. Grow your teams organically and not too fast. And community needs water and sunlight to thrive. Promote, training, and compensate your teams a lot. Don't underpay your ops and overpay your devs. Your ops are awesome people. They should be paid accordingly. That's the end of it. I hope I didn't rush too much, and I will now open for questions. Without an executive sponsor, SRE transformation are not going to go far. According to Mark Hornby, author of the book Engineering DevOps, so this is the Q1, which I'm going to paste here. How can you convince decision makers of a company to sponsor SRE transformation? This is an amazing question, and it's so hard to answer. It's hard to answer. So let's just say, usually when somebody is convinced or somebody thinks SRE is the right thing, they call me to talk to their CTO. And they say, let's call Riccardo. So how do you convince them? Honestly, first, it's not about convincing. It's about understanding if that's what's the right thing for you to do. Because ultimately, SRE is not an SRE, is silver bullet that works for everybody. Usually, I try to do a discovery session where I try to understand for a certain team what people are doing, what is their culture. Because again, if messengers are shot and they don't admit, one of the questions I ask is, how many outages did you have last year? 12. Good. Is it 12? And somebody says, no, it was many more, but we only declared the biggest because we didn't want. Okay. So that discovery tells me a lot about how the company operates. Number 2, I ask, what is the most business critical application you have? Okay. Were your customers affected by that application being unreliable? And many times the answer is no, we're good the way we are. What I try to tell a CTO, and the first thing when a company wants to implement SRE is I want to talk to the CTO or the COO or the CIO and say, hey, is there anything, do you think more reliability will help your business? And if so, are you happy to take a cut? Like when things are very unreliable, are you okay to freeze your development cycle and to go to your customer and say, sorry, the thing that we promised to do, we are not doing it anymore? If the answer is yes, the SRE is for you. If the answer is no, I would say, like, don't even bother. Too expensive, it doesn't serve you. One last thing, a friend of mine in Paris, Bruno Reboul, he has a theory. SRE is needed when you need to balance innovation and reliability at the same time. If you want only one, you don't need SRE. But if you need to innovate fast, think of like you are a fintech unicorn and you want to eat fast all of your competition, then SRE is probably for you. If instead your program, the thing that you're selling, whatever your business is an application that changes the code once every 6 or 12 months, probably the pace of innovation is not much. You can just concentrate on reliability without SRE. SRE, through SLO and error budget, tells you when you can move faster and when you should instead slow down. That's what SRE is.
Okay, so a rather basic question that most people think that SRE is the Google version of DevOps. The question is if this is true. If not, what are the major differences? How would you describe these two in high level?
I have a beautiful slide for this. In my, by the way, Sigmund, sorry, I don't want to politicize myself. In case you enjoy this is an SRE 200 session. I have a 100 session in which I answer this question beautifully. It's called SRE Jumpstart, and I have a slide for this that explains it very well. The short explanation to this is SRE is a specialization of DevOps. This is it. Can you see this 5 square slide?
Yep.
So if DevOps is this is SRE. So for us, SRE is a specialization or opinionated implementation of DevOps. So how does Google reduce organizational silos? Through shared ownership. How do we do accept failure as normal? Through SLO and blameless postmortem and error budget. How do we implement gradual change? By reducing the cost of failure, so reducing the span radius of your deployments, etc. Leverage tooling and automation, build the solution, don't be the solution. In Google, we have a motto which is no heroes. We don't like heroes. If you need a hero, it means that your process is broken. You should be able for your hero to go on holiday and steal the system to work. And my favorite, which is the last one, measure everything, not only your computer, CPU, memory, and disk, but also quantify how much time your engineers are spending on toil, on automation, on tickets, on pages. We have everything we do in Google is measurable, right? When I was on call, I could read 1 month later that the customer paged somebody at this time, that Riccardo took 30 seconds to hack the pager. Sorry, the primary took 3 minutes to knock the pager, to say not me because I'm in the toilet, for example, and Riccardo took 30 seconds to hack the pager, and then it took me 7 minutes to give a full meaningful response on Salesforce to my customer. All of that is documented, and these numbers are very important to your business. I don't know if, Sigmund, if I answered your question. So yes, SRE is actually the specialization of, is how Google does DevOps, in our opinion, at least.
Okay, thank you. There's another question which is kind of interesting, that what is the reason for rather low adaptation of site reliability engineering? So if you ask around like 100 people and ask about if they ever heard about site reliability engineering, then most of them will say that I have no idea what it is. And if you ask around people that if they use this methodology or culture within their organization, then most of them will say no, or I don't know. So what's the reason for that?
First, the first half of your question gets me unprepared. If that was true, I wouldn't have a job. To me, like everybody, and maybe I'm biased because I work for Google and I have some echo chamber where I hear about SRE all the time. To me, the popularity of SRE is a lot bigger than its actual correct adoption. So I agree with you with the second part, where people, are you adopting SRE? No. I think since we wrote the book in 2015 and a lot of people read the book and implemented the book, I noticed that if you look on LinkedIn or if you look on job search, there is a lot of job search in the part of SRE. So now it looks like the market has decided that instead of calling DevOps, this is like 2010, now they call them SRE instead. So I actually find the word to have a hype moment, which to me is negative in a way, because it's people are concentrating on the word more than on the meaning. Whereas on the adoption, I totally agree with you. Most people are not doing real SRE. They think they are because they call themselves SRE, but ultimately they're still doing the job of yesterday. They're still busy doing tickets all the time. Okay. That's what an SRE is not, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. And there's another question. What resources would you recommend for those who would like to learn about site reliability engineering and maybe implement it at their companies?
Well, the number one resources is like SRE book. If you Google SRE book, you will find sre.google/books. And in this page, you find the 3 books. You can read them online for free. You can buy them in whatever for like $20. You can buy the paper version, but actually it's ultimately all free. So that's my first suggestion. Some excerpt of them exist in an HTML form. For example, the what's it called? The incident, the postmortem exercise, in which you have a fake postmortem written by Jennifer Petoff and Betsy Bayer, which is pretty awesome because you just read it and you start writing a postmortem in that way. So in my opinion, get started with the book. Start, in my opinion, with the third, Site Reliability Engineering, which is the theoretical one, and I think is the oldest. Then you get to the second, which, if I remember, is the second. I think they are in reverse order of time. The second has a lot of screenshots from our Google internal tools, which I was very surprised. And they say, if you share this, you lose your job. Then I find it in a book, because I'm like, okay. So let me tell you, those books show you tools that I used to use when I was in support in 2012 to 2015, like Autolator, for example. Yes, Ingo, thank you. Seeking SRE is also a good book to read. So I will start with the books. That's the easiest way. And then there are resources. There is a Coursera course on SRE, which I recommend to my Nooglers, to my customer engineers who start in cloud. They want to learn more about SRE. I encourage them to take the course. Let me tell you, it's long. It will take you a few weeks to do it, but it's special. I like it. It's curated. Google helped a lot on that. It's curated by us. So that would be the resources I say. And last but not least, if you like to do things pragmatically, Google Art of SLO, and you can say, oh, but that's because you are in the video. Yeah, I don't tell you because I'm in the video, but because this is a very dear program to me. Art of SLO is a program created by a colleague of mine in UK, and with a lot of help from a lot of other people. And it's a self course which your company can do by yourself. You can read it on a Saturday morning, or you can do it yourself. You can invest 1 week in reading the exercises and doing them with your team. It's a gaming application of vampires, where there are 5 scenarios, and each scenario you need to build the SLO for that scenario. And it's beautiful because for 1.5 of them, for the super simple one and a complex one, there is actually the solution. So start with them, do the solution yourself, look at the solution, and then do the other one without the solution. So that's my suggestion.
We have an interesting comment in the chat from Zoltan, which says, my feeling is that SRE is best suited for public internet services. What's your opinion on that?
Zoltan, can you elaborate on public internet services? You mean an application which has a public IP and that is publicly available, or an internet services provider like Vodafone and T-System, etc., or what else? Tell me more, Zoltan, please. I might not understand what you mean.
Zoltan, if you happen to have a camera and mic available, then we are happy to put you live, and you can even tell it to the audience, but you can even type it. Let me know in the chat, okay? Till then, I have another question that are there different roles within site reliability engineering? So usually the most popular or straightforward one that people know is that there is a role, so-called site reliability engineer. But are there different levels? Are there different roles with different focus?
Amazing question, and I have a very pragmatical answer for you. Yes, at least in Google we have Ben Trainer decided that for SREs to do their job at best. Let's remember, Ben Trainer, who created SRE, is actually a software engineer. He's a software engineer, which in Google we call SWE. SW stands for software and E for engineer. So SWE is not Swedish, it's a software engineer in our jargon, okay? So in Google, an SRE can be an SRE SWE or an SRE SE, system engineer. And the idea is that they should be 50-50. So let's say the Google Cloud BigQuery team should have 50-50 between software engineers and system engineers. Why? Because you want a portion of them to be kick-ass coders, people who can look in the BigQuery code and fix it if there is a problem. But then you also need people who are able to troubleshoot a problem, to see the architecture, to see how maybe there is a capacity issue in US, so you have cascading failure that are failing through, rippling through, I don't know, South America or Australia or Europe. And usually the coder is not well equipped to understand those kind of issues. So you kind of need a mix of system people and software people. And that is your team. So as in every team, in every normal job in the world, you have a mixture of capabilities. And usually the best teams are teams that you don't want a person to excel in everything, but you just need coverage on everything. Like you don't need to have the best developer in the world and the best sysadmin in the world in the same person. You just need to have both people in the same team, possibly awake at the same time, right? That's what you really need. I don't know if that answers your question. So 50-50 between sys and software. That would be my simple answer.
That answers the questions. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have another question from Josh in the chat. He says that how can we quantify value of the long-term investment, especially with IT being a cost center at our company?
So number one, if IT is a cost center, which usually is, if SRE is a cost center, you're never getting out of this. Again, I said because you can, the value is going to be negative for the company for a long time, and people, I don't think they will have the patience to see until the number becomes positive. But you ask a smart question, unfortunately, which is how can I quantify the value for the long-term investment? So DORA, in my opinion, has a good explanation to it, because in DORA, if you look about it, it tells you there are quantifiable numbers that are predictive of your final number. So the final number is how much money you make. Okay, this you know, right? The pre-final numbers, the numbers that model those numbers, are actually 4 or 5 numbers that you can calculate very easily, right? Let me show it to you. Google, what is g.com/DevOps, which are the 4 DORA numbers. Those numbers are probably due to change over time in your SRE adoption. Take a quick check. You click here. So the simple question for me, the simple answer for you, Josh, and probably I'm cheating because I'm oversimplifying, is you take this, you do it now, and now maybe your lead time is this, and maybe your deployment frequency is this, your time to restore is this, I'm exaggerating, and the change failure percentage is this, and you operate, I don't know, in government, okay? Now you are a low performer. You do this exercise again in 3 months or in 6 months, those numbers should have changed, and maybe from low, you're going to get to medium and then to high, and those numbers are actually pragmatic numbers. So that is one answer I can give you. The other question is, start measuring the time that your ops are spending on tickets, because the beautiful part of automating yourself out of the job is that it's measurable. I can say yesterday I did 47 tickets of sudo reboot for too much disk in TMP. Then I create some automation that automatically SSH and does sudo reboot in there. How long does it take me? It takes me 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, those 47 tickets will become 0. But then I will have another problem because sudo reboot doesn't really solve. So I want to do a find/tmp --size, and then I fix it and I make it better. That will decrease the number of tickets again and again. And you look, after 2 weeks, you implemented the V2 of the script, your automation gets better, then the volume of ticket gets lower on that part. Of course, you need to have tickets for everything, and you need to be able to classify the tickets by type. So you can say, I had 47 sudo reboot, 5 DBA tickets, and 12 IAM tickets. I'm just making it up, right? So again, you need to measure everything, including the things that people are working on, because the flex on those numbers will tell you if you're getting better or not.
Okay. Let's get back to Zoltan's question. So his original question was that his feeling is that SRE is best suited for public internet services, and the detailed elaboration of this, that we have many small customers who run internal applications to support their work, as opposed to those who provide public internet services to support the lots of their customers. So what's your opinion on that?
And then he says, an internal application workload is mostly stable, feature set is mostly stable, operating environment is mostly stable, no huge dynamic changes. So first, Zoltan, I don't want to contradict you here, but I would say, like, thank you for what you wrote, because that explains very well the situation. That being the situation, it looks like in your case, you have a few internet-facing, customer-facing important services, which change a lot. And then you have a number of internal applications that are mostly stable, and even if they break, it's not such a big deal. But anyway, their feature set is mostly stable. If that is the case, of course, SRE applied to internal application doesn't make sense, and SRE applied to external application does make sense. So you are 100% correct on everything you said. But let me tell you, there might be cases in which you have the external facing application, which is rather stable, and an internal application which provides a service to everybody, which is incredibly critical. And for some reason, it's changing a lot. You are creating your own Kubernetes, right? The Zoltan Netis, for example, and that everything runs on top of Zoltan Netis, and that has a huge variability. And if that breaks, everything breaks, including the customer facing services. In that case, you would want to apply SRE to that. So what I'm trying to say is that, of course, a customer-facing application tends to have more critical SLOs, also because probably you have SLAs, and to defend an SLA, you need an SLO usually. But sometimes also internal application, that, like Google has internal application that you don't know exist, like, I don't know, Colossus, or like some very low-level big table Colossus, like some very basic infrastructure and platform services that we use to serve the whole of Google, from YouTube, etc. Those have incredibly strict SLO, very powerful SLO. We care about them much more than the customer facing. Why? Because if they go down, everything in Google goes down. So it depends. Coming back to your question, I think you're right from what I understand. Just because in the example that you say, from how you phrase it, it looks like we are in agreement on what you say, yes.
Okay, maybe somewhat related the question from SOAR. Feels like our developer pipeline, be it by the customer or insiders, are too far removed from the platform itself to do site reliability engineering effectively. In my understanding, they are service providers, and they do not have too much control over things that are operated by them, but they are at the customer.
So I can confirm with you that you need to know the platform. If you're removed from the things that you're using, you cannot do SRE effectively on that. On that, I agree with you, but I don't understand the dynamic between the developer pipeline, the customers, the insiders. I'm afraid I need more information to understand your question. If you have a minute to rewrite it in other words. How can I trick my company to stop treating IT as a cost center? I think the easiest way is to try to call something with a different name where they don't see it as a cost center.
I have added SOAR to the presenters, so if he can enable his mic, then he can elaborate the question.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay, it needed to refresh. This is a new platform. I never used it before. So the thing is basically the same as Zoltan said it. So we have, we are the platform owners. We have, let's say it's a shared private cloud. We have many customers running on it. They are doing whatever they want. We do not know. It's a black box. It can be some sort of IoT serving system, whatever. We do not know. We do not care. And they are doing whatever they want. How do you do SRE in this case? I mean, I can serve my platform, of course. I can monitor the platform. I can monitor performance. I can do everything, but I do not have any interface to them. I cannot steer their development, and they cannot have any input to their platform changes or the platform configuration, because I am limited by the company itself.
So, but I'm not getting it. Like, you say all the customers are doing whatever they want in a black box. But
yeah,
what are you doing? What is your service? I don't understand. Is it a library that they install, or is it an API that they call? What is it?
No, it's VMs. So I have let's say I have the storage, I have the hypervisor, let's say VMware. And I control those two, and maybe I control that. So I have the hardware, I control the hardware.
So you provide the infrastructure, is this the case?
Yes, okay. It's a private cloud, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're a private cloud provider, the first thing I would say, your product, you're an engineer or a product owner?
Well, I'm an engineer, most likely.
Okay, so the first thing is your product owner, the person responsible for your system, should interview your users, say, what is the most relevant thing to you? Let's say it could be, the time to spin up a new VM, it's so fast in a cloud provider, but for you, it's so slow. Or it could be something else, like it could be the speed to turn it up, or the median time between failures, or something else. Like, ask your user what's important to them and start measuring it and put SLO on top of it. If it's something actionable, or it could be when you get out of capacity, it takes you 3 months to provision on your computer. It should be not more than a week. Then it means that you need to stack a lot of computer in the basement to grow. You know what I mean? Like, ask your user what is important for them and start measuring. And that's the PO job. And you, as the engineer in the team, you should start implementing that and having dashboard. and then being paged, if that makes sense, when those numbers start not looking good. That would be my easiest implementation. But again, it depends. The question is, does it make sense for you to do SRE on top of that? Like, I'm not sure. Is it? Because do you have a high change of innovation? Like, do you have a V1, V2, V3 changing 3 times a day for your hypervisor, or is it pretty stable? If it's pretty stable, you shouldn't do SRE on it. You should concentrate on something else.
Yeah, that was my question. And does it make sense for that? Because in the company, they are pushing the SRE even when it doesn't make sense. So that's why I'm asking this.
Yeah, exactly. And you've seen in my presentation, that's one of the biggest anti-pattern. Like, people putting SRE everywhere. That's wrong. Every company, no matter, I work with very, very big companies, and we tell them, put SRE in one first adopter, and then let's see how it goes. And if you like it, we take the appetite, we do on another 2 or 3 or 4. And say, oh, we need to start with 25. Good luck with that. 25 what? Because as you said, in this case, it doesn't, like, let's be honest, if you're, I don't know, Alibaba, Amazon, Google, or Azure, then it makes sense to have very strict SLO for creating a VM, but you create millions of VMs, like you have those numbers. But if you are a small provider that just creates VMs and they are roughly, the system is not changing much, it just does work, right? You have a commodity because probably you buy it from VMware, right? You just configure it yourself, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I think you should start observing numbers. For example, you could say from when the ticket comes in, asking for a VM, to when someone has finished preparing the VM and getting it to the customer, it takes 45 minutes, 45 seconds. Is it completely automated with an API? I don't know. You could measure the time, but start asking the customer what they want, calculate those numbers, and give them back to your PO. And the PO will do something with that. Do you need SRE on that? Do you need to be paged? The question you need to ask yourself is, do I need to be paged where the number is not what my PO wants? If the answer is yes, that's a good example for SRE. If the answer is no, that's just a bloody metric. Give them the metric and move on. That's my
Okay, yeah. Okay, thanks. That's yeah, we basically lack information. That's the summary for me, at least for me. We need to start asking questions.
Yeah, I see SRE working better on SaaS, on, when you have like a web application, something like an API, something where you can get 1 million calls a second. That makes sense. But prepping a VM is an event that will happen once, twice, 10 times a day. Like, an SRE metric should have millions or thousands of events a day to give it the volume you need to calculate 3, 4, or 5 nines. Like,
yeah, like Zoltan said, yeah, when the environment is stable and not much thing happening there, then it doesn't make sense.
I totally agree. Exactly.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So let's see if we have any other questions in the chat. I don't see any more of them. Final opportunity to ask from Riccardo. If there are no more questions, then I thank you very much for your time. We thank you for the high quality and very interesting presentation. It was very informative, very useful.
My pleasure being here. And again, as I said, if you liked this and if you want to have a more vanilla explanation of what SRE is, because this is kind of like a very advanced learning that we had by talking to customers for a while. But if you want something more basic, which actually have a lot of interesting stuff, because it tells you how to implement an SLO and why SLOs are really changing the game, feel free to invite me again.
Okay, we'll do. It's a rather interesting topic. So for those who would like to learn more about site reliability engineering, if you just search for Google and site reliability engineering, there is a very informative page which describes details of the site reliability engineering, and the site reliability engineering books are very informative too. I already read them, so I can recommend you to take a look and learn more about this interesting topic. Okay. Yep.
One last thing, there is a code bar here, as smart people have noticed. The other is me doing the Italian gesture, like, do you have a question? If you feel like dropping me a note like, oh, this was interesting, or this part was a bit boring, I I really love feedback because that gets me better. And usually I read it before the next, so I can fix the slide. We say, oh, slide 47 was horrible, or the part with the dinosaur I really didn't get it, or something like this.
So thank you very much, everybody, for joining this event. Thank you, Riccardo, for the very informative and very good presentation. Thank you for GDG Cloud Budapest and Deutsche Telekom IT Solutions for the opportunity, and see you soon. I would like to recommend you to check out the upcoming events, especially that we are organizing a Hashcode team programming competition again, which is going to take place in April. So follow the community and learn about the upcoming events. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.